Hi, my name is Raymond Deach, and today I'll be presenting about the revitalization and rehabilitation of Beecher Terrace in Louisville, Kentucky. Here we're looking at a map of Louisville, Kentucky, and you can see in this general vicinity is the downtown area, and located here between 9th and 13th Street, and between Muhammad Ali Boulevard and West Jefferson Street, we have the area known as Beecher Terrace. Looking at this map, we can see that most of our traffic will be coming here through downtown and into our site and along the strip between West Muhammad Ali Boulevard. And the site is already split up into 10th, 11th, and 12th Street in the main streets between the site. We can also see that we have two buildings that we had to keep for our site, which was Baxter Community Center, which is located here, and this church here, Church of Our Merciful Savior. So I would like to go into our PowerPoint presentation now and talk a little more about why we did what we did for the site. It was a long process deciding what concept to go with and how we could make the best place for the residents to have. But let's move into why we did the decisions we did for the site. First, we started out with several site plans of how we could determine what would work best for the lives of our residents. One of the things about Beecher Terrace is they have a very high crime rate. 1 in 6 residents go in and out of jail annually that live in Beecher Terrace. So there's like a lot of gang problems and shooting problems and stuff. So open sight lines were a main concern for us as we were designing for this project. So a lot of our designs will reflect this central green space courtyard, and that way you have this one continuous flow of sight in this to make the place safer for us. So, and another thing, since we had all that traffic coming downtown, which downtown would be like this way, or going from the traffic coming this way, and we wanted to make sure that we framed our businesses, which you can see are like in blue here, and the purple is mixed between residential and businesses. We wanted to make sure that we had the businesses closer to downtown and on the side, which was basically the strip for us. So we made those realizations quite quickly. Here's an enlarged version of that one site plan, and again, you can see that we tried to maintain this green courtyard space between most of our concepts that we offer. Then I started to play with the idea of stacking buildings. What if we started to stack and twist buildings and stuff? And I was ultimately inspired by, you know, just playing with my daughter and her toys, her blocks, and I started to work on that, and that led me to this idea of twisting the buildings into the different shapes to find some type of balance between the green roofs, and it could open up the buildings below to a more green space feeling. I wish this has been done like many times before. It's nothing new. Well, it's definitely new for Louisville, but not new for the rest of the world. Because here in like New Babylon, we have this idea of having these plinths in the cities opened up above, and it being kind of random as where it goes, which is where the idea also kind of came from after playing with those blocks and seeing how we could have a city just going off in different directions without having to stick to this main grid. Also, we were looking at cities that incorporated a lot of green roofs and ability to move through a site without having to go like back down to the ground, just from rooftop to rooftop, which I think was also one of the main driving aspects of this design that we came up with. And here's another picture. This one's called Interlace. As you can see, it has many buildings below, holding up the other buildings as they stack and twist upon each other. Here was the first official concept sketch that we had of what it would kind of look like, where we're just starting to experiment with the different buildings overlapping each other without the consideration of the church here having to be not demolished and included on the site. So here we're just playing with the idea and experimenting how it could work on the site. We also considered, and should we have it over the roads and have these rooftops go onto each other so that all of them connect and touch each other? But ultimately that was decided against because of the amount of fires that could occur across the site, and that if they're all connected, maybe they could catch rapidly, and that's something we just wanted to avoid. So ultimately we decided to not do that type of interaction with the site. Here you can understand it a little bit better as we're starting to play with the different stackings and pooling of how tall different buildings should be, and understanding how we could connect these rooftops and completely include like a community feeling without also bringing in security issues, like whether or not robberies would be more likely to happen because all the rooftops, people would just be able to go from the private aspect to the public aspect of determining how people move around, and since burglary is the main issue in this area and why people are sent to jail. So, I mean, it was definitely a consideration of whether or not we should have that just open access to everyone or not. And ultimately, I think we came to this decision that kind of met halfway between the two. Here's another version of it where we're starting to play with the shapes, and this one's a lot closer to what we ultimately decided to go with as far as the shapes and stacking of the site. Here I wanted to look at traffic conditions, and we ultimately decided to keep 12th Street and 10th Street, and of course 9th and 13th stayed and remained, as well as Jefferson Muhammad Ali Boulevard. But in addition to wanting to keep the green roofs and open up the green space for the site, we also didn't want to have parking detracting too much from it. So we included parking lots above ground at the ends by West Jefferson between 13th and 12th Street, and Muhammad Ali as well over here, and by the Hawker Center, and it's kind of mirrored onto the other side, but there's more parking on the downtown side, as you can see, and around the church and the community center as well. Actually, there's a parking lot there that we kept. But mostly we wanted to put our parking lot underground. So you have all these businesses here in our model that we basically submerged the parking by 8 feet and left 4 feet above ground to have more ventilation and such, which here is kind of a diagram. And we also discussed that we could have more parking if necessary below the other buildings on the site too, kind of in this U-shape style, or that one's more like a C, and this one's kind of like a backward C. But ultimately, we decided we don't know that we would need that much parking, but it's definitely an option if they decided they wanted to do that much. So here's kind of like a model of what it would look like in the early beginning stages of discussing this underground parking. Some would go under buildings, some would just go straight from the ground. It wouldn't interrupt the greenway very much because you would still be able to walk and through it. That area and the businesses wouldn't be that interrupted as well. And it just tucks it away. That way we have that clean, nice green space that we're looking for. But there was also conversations of like, oh, there's not going to be enough light. What are we going to do about the light and the ventilation? And we sometimes talk about having these filters through the buildings of the sunlight and opening that up, and that way the parking could be below. And another option was we could have some different like follies and art projects where there'd be holes down into the ground to let up ventilation and light, and they're placed around the site. And I think it would be like a good opportunity for people because you can also come around into these buildings. And so I thought it would be an opportunity to play with the site and interact with the site, which is a lot of what our concept is about. We're trying to capture this feeling of getting to interact with the site and not feeling trapped and like you're in a prison, because most of the people that live in this community end up going to prison at some point in their lives. Usually everyone at least has one family member that has gone to prison. Sometimes more than one. Sometimes their whole families are in prison, and that's not what we were wanting to create here. We were not wanting to have another prison for these people to live in. So I thought that this would be a fun, whimsical way of allowing some light, some ventilation, and allowing people to play with the site overall. We talked about materiality some. Overall, we decided to do like some brick on the bottom walls, but mostly concrete panels where some of them will be tinted, picking up on the colors like you see the red here in these doors, trying to tie in with the site and using pops of color. And this is the community center as well. And on the back side they have this mural where they have some pinks and some whites and blues and some greens shades that we also wanted to like pop around the site just to add some color and some vibrancy to these people's lives. We are also capitalizing on the Riverwalk, which goes down what was 11th Street, by having the Hawker Center closer to the riverside. We're allowing people to continue walking into our site. And this is a sun solar shader, and there would be tons of seating around here, and the park would be here as well, Baxter Park, allowing people to play, and just it's a great homage and welcoming to our site, and that allows people to come in and really feel like they're a part of the site, and it goes everywhere onto the site, allowing people to just really grasp and capture that they can have this site and they can use this site and they can make what they want of the site, which would open it up to that Riverwalk, as I was saying. So for the stakeholder positions in our presentations, we have community gardening, which I did, smart buildings by Tinquan Liu, education by Chelsea Taborn, and entrepreneurship and businesses by Alex Peterson, and community centers and conference halls by Matthew Fawcett. So for community gardening, I wanted to try to figure out how I could optimize the amount of food that these people have access to. That would be public foods, and enrich the diets of the people living on this site. Because in addition to the poverty, you have people who aren't able to find jobs, and because of that they aren't always exposed to the healthy fruits and vegetables that they should be. So my goal was to see in what ways and where to optimize the amount of fruits and nuts and vegetables that the people are offered. So I would like to include different planters in front of stores. That way we could have different like tomatoes, vegetables, and herbs and stuff for people to be able to use. Trees often bear fruit and nuts, and if we could use those types of trees as our main deciduous plants that we, or deciduous trees that we were to plant on the site, we could really optimize who is exposed to different types of fruits and vegetables, increasing their diets and overall providing a better life for them. Also in areas where there's kind of like more shady alleyways, there's trellises that we can use, and different plants require less light. I believe squashes require some less light, and that would work well in those areas as well. So next would be talking about different bushes, which berries like to grow on different types of bushes, and there's other plants that wouldn't spread much as well that we could use to line roads with, or trees as well we could use, and with the fruits there, that could be a really good addition to their diets and such. Also, the idea of having rent-a-plots came about, and I believe on many of the rooftops those will be there and for people to access and have a better chance of having a better diet, and overall decreasing their amount of money they have to spend on groceries and making life easier for them overall. Here on the right side, I discuss how there's different ways we can get rainwater to lower the bills for rain use or water use as well. Also, there's some options in Kentucky where you can have some poultry on the site, like chickens. So that's also an option to some areas, and I think we could also find room on the site for that as well. But there's also different education programs that can go along with it. A lot of times some cities have like kids gardening programs, and it really just helps them know how to reinvest their time into having a good diet, and cooking classes that can go along with that as well for children, just to open up their opportunities to have that better diet and that lifestyle for them. Also, there's also parklet planters that we could have with hanging baskets that can also bear fruit. A lot of tomatoes are planted in hanging baskets, and there's different options for that overall. This is presented by Ting Quan Liu, and if you would please pause the video at this point for her to present it, and then press play again, I would appreciate it. This is presented by Chelsea Taborn. If you would please pause the video and then press play again. Community conference centers, community centers and conference halls by Matthew Fawcett. Please pause and play again. And finally, entrepreneurship and businesses with Alex Peterson. As for my part and my contribution to the site, I mainly did parking, and I worked on the Hawker Center, and I worked with different rooftops, and I contributed to designing the concept for the buildings. But here we're looking at the Hawker Center, which you would have entrances by the parking lot and for the overall site here. Inside we will find ample room for seating on this first floor here, and we have light coming in from the roof in the sky above, and we have 34 different stations, each which would have room for an office and a big freezer and refrigeration system inside the area with cooktops and ovens and necessary kitchen space for cooking and selling to customers. Interesting thing about Hawker Centers is usually you don't find things like McDonald's and Burger King and like different Chick-fil-A's and stuff like that. Like, those don't exist usually in Hawker Centers. Usually it's like a building where people local with their different types of food will showcase that. And I think this allows for interesting opportunities with like the education, as you saw with Chelsea Taborn's presentation of education. There's lots of different maker spaces, which you saw on Alex's, and in Chelsea's you saw like a culinary school, and I think that when those people are trained from either working in those maker spaces or working through the culinary school to get their degrees through there, they have a chance with the Hawker Center to be able to showcase their different talents and skills as culinary professionals. And I think this is a great place for it because it's supposed to be unique and overall try to exemplify the different culinary aspects of what that they've been exposed to. And overall, Louisville is a very big foodie destination. Like, they love their food. They can't get enough of it. So I think having a Hawker Center would be a great opportunity to capitalize on those aspects of their community. So, as I said, this is the first floor, and we have egress here on both ends leading upstairs at the Hawker Center. Overall, there's 34 different food stations, and you have more upstairs as well with more seating area on the upper floor, and outside on the rooftop, which is also a green roof, you would have some areas for sitting and eating and drinking coffee and stuff like that. As I discussed before, we have parking at both ends of the site, and underground too, which is what I'm going to show you next. Below the Hawker Center, we have this huge parking lot, and this is basically the footprint of where the Hawker Center would be. And throughout the site, which it goes, and there's businesses above both ends here and throughout here. And overall, it's just ample parking for like the entire site, with opportunities to spread that parking to the other sides as well if necessary. Also, I wanted to show you one example of the rooftops that I designed. Due to time constraints, we weren't able to design all of them, but here's one example leading up to it. Here we look up and we have stairs coming from the bottoms of our building going up to the tops, just creating this type of atmosphere that's free, it's not restricted. And a lot of times you will see in our site plan with having these businesses on the bottom acting as plinths for the entire residential, you'll find that it seems maybe a little more restrictive. But we really wanted to open that up and allow like freedom of expression and just different ideas for the entire site, and allow people to feel like they can move around without feeling like they're going to go to another prison. So we wanted to use more organic shapes in our rooftop designs versus the inorganic you see in a lot of our building shapes and our residential business you see on the site. So we really wanted to open up the possibilities for that. So at this point, I would like for Alex and Ting Kwan to present their businesses that they designed, and Chelsea has some as well. And then I would like to leave it to Chelsea to move into her residences and for Matt to finish up for us. And afterwards we'll have questions. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.